shoppers, welcome to Bello's Designs. My name is Catherine and I'm so glad that you joined me today because we are going to be making this mini slimline Easter card with Pippin and a coordinating envelope to match so that your card will be ready to pop in the mail and send off to anyone who's one of your favorite people. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We'll talk about the supplies we're going to need. Today's card. I'll be using LAV 857 field moss, and I went ahead and chose the larger stone with the moss growing off the top. The LAV 729 woodland fern, and this is the larger of the two. I also have LAV 581 Pippin mini. Isn't he adorable? We'll also be using the small leaf vine from LAV 679 foliage set, the red berry leaf set using the small branch, which is LAV 704, and then we'll be using the flowers from LAV 256, which is called Flowers Miniature. We're going to need some other supplies for today's card. I'm going to be using a piece of lightweight cardstock, which is cut at 8 by 7 3/4, and we'll go ahead and go over the scoring at the end of the video, but this is for a coordinating envelope to go with the card. So I like to use a lighter weight cardstock that really isn't appropriate for greeting cards, I don't feel. This is cut at 8 inches and scored 3/4 of an inch from each side, and then it is also 7 3/4 inches high, and I have scored it on my scoreboard at 6 2.5 inches, but we'll go ahead and go over that when we get to it. I also thought it would be fun to create a little insert to go inside my envelope, and so this is a piece of scrapbook paper, which is double-sided, and I think this came from Echo Park. It is cut at 6 inches by 4 1/4, and I went ahead and scored it at 2.5 inches. That will go inside the envelope. I have a piece of multivarious cardstock at 3 by 6 inches, and then of course a coordinating cardstock base. I went ahead and chose yellow, and it is a 6 by 6 inch piece, and it's scored at 3 inches. Now, before I started today, I did go on the U.S. Post Office website to find the minimum size for a card that's mailable, which is 3.5 by 5 inches, and our envelope will fit that size. So if you make the envelope that goes with the card, it should be perfect for mailing. Let's talk about the other things we're going to use today. For my inks, I will be using the Lisa Horton Cloud 9 Matte Ink in Juicy Pineapple. If you've been following my videos, you know that I love how these blend together. I'll also be using the Margarita in the Cloud 9 Matte Blending Ink. One of the ink pads that I've chosen to use today is my Elements by Lavinia in Lime Punch. And then we'll need a few VersaFine Clair colors. So I'll be starting with the Nocturne by VersaFine Clair. I also have the Verdant Green, which is a beautiful bright green, and it pairs really nicely with the Lime Punch and the Cloud 9 Margarita. And I also have this, the Glamorous in VersaFine Clair. When I ordered it, I thought it would be a red, and so I was very pleasantly surprised to find out it's more of a hot pink. So that made me very happy, because lime green and hot pink are some of my favorite colors. All right, I'll also be using some blending brushes for my Cloud 9 inks, and then I have this small blending brush that I'll be using with my Lavinia Elements as we move on. We'll also be using our glitter pink Posca pen. I have my Micron pen in black in case I need to touch anything up. I have a watercolor pencil in a gray to add a little depth under my bunny. And then, of course, I also have my white chalk pastel from Bello that I'll be using to add highlights and details. A few other things that we're going to need for our envelope, of course, is you'll want a bone folder. You can also use the edge of a crisp stamp block if you're new to stamping and you don't have a bone folder yet. A pair of fine scissors. And to put my card together, one of my favorite things to use is the double-sided tear tape. So I'm going to be using that today. I also went ahead and grabbed my corner rounder. Any corner rounder will do, but of course you don't have to do that if you don't have one. And then finally, to add some glitter and sparkle, I have a diamond type Stickles glitter. It is not by Stickles, it's another brand, and I'm actually not even sure where that came from because I found it in my craft stash. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to start blending with my Lisa Horton Cloud9 ink, and I'm going to do the yellow in the middle of my card, and then we'll come into the edges with the green in Margarita. Right, I actually decided as I'm working on this that I'm going to leave the bottom green and just do the yellow blending right up through the top. So I'm going to come back in with my yellow and add a little bit more. All right, I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So it's time to start stamping. This is the fun part. I'm going to start with the small berry wreath and the verdant green from VersaFine. And I'll just give it, give it a little tap, and we'll come in about halfway up. Give it a nice press. I think that will do nicely. Clean off my stamp. All right, and I'm going to change it out for the, whoops, that is not the stamp that I wanted. This was the one I wanted. I'm going to use the green fern next, or the fern, and we're going to stamp that also in the VersaFine Clear Verdant. And I'll do some that I'll stamp right onto the card, and then a few I will stamp a second generation just to give it a little bit of depth and in the background. All right, I like how that's coming together. The next one I'm going to do actually is the small miniature flowers in the glamorous pink. So we'll do a few first and second generation stamps with this. One of the things I really liked about this card is how quickly it does come together. Makes it fun to do. Go. Clean that one off. All right, and now I'm going to come in with my field moss. Let me change out that stamp. And I'm going to stamp that one along the bottom. I'll start under the wreath. And then once again, we'll just do lots of first and second generation stamping in here. And I'll come back a little bit later with our Elements ink to darken up some of that. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp my little Pippin over here. Let's get him inked up really well. Got a little bit of extra there. Looks like we've got a pretty good coverage here, so let's go ahead and plop him right down in the grass. There we go. Pretty perfect. Clean that off. All right, now finally I'm going to come in with this little hanging vine and the VersaFine Claire, and I wanted to save that for last so that I could kind of have it framing our little Pippin right here. So coming back in with the verdant green. And doing a few of those little vines. This really is one of my favorite stamp sets. These tiny little vines add that nice extra element to my cards. Right. We're nearly finished. The last thing that I want to do is I'm going to use my fine detailed blending brush and the Line Punch by Lavinia Elements. And we're going to use that just to color in the grass underneath Pippin here. A little bit of extra green. Isn't he so cute? Just adorable. Put that away. And at this point, I am going to come in with my pink Posca glitter pen. I'm just going to add some sparkle around the flowers. I'll pretty those up a little bit more, and I'm going to use the spots from the stamp to just fill that in, give them a little bit of glitter. Okay, the next thing I'm going to use is my chalk pastel in white, just to add a little bit of highlights to Pippin. Add a little bit down his tummy. A smudge. He's tiny, he doesn't need many highlights. Give him a little bit of a white tail. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to come back in with my gray watercolor pencil and just add a little bit of shadow underneath him, just to ground him. Not being very fussy with that. All right, that's almost done. The last thing I'm going to do is come in with my diamond stickles and add a little bit of glitter to both the wreath that's hanging over him, and I would like to add some, I think, to the moss underneath him. One of the things I love about these cards is all the glitter and glamour that we add to them. Sadly, it never photographs well, so it's hard to see. Not sure if you can see that. It's very sparkly on the bottom, and then of course these little tendrils. All right, I'm going to put that aside to dry, and let's talk about putting our envelope together. I went ahead and drew a little diagram, so I'm not sure if this will be helpful to anybody, but here we go. This is what the finished product is going to look like, so I don't know if you want to take a screenshot of that, but we have our base for our envelope is 8 inches across, and I am going to score my envelope at 3/4 of an inch from each side. Then I will turn it and score it at 6 inches and 2.5 inches. So here we go. Going to bring in my paper trimmer and use just my scoring blade. Make sure you don't get those mixed up. You'll be making lots of extra scrap paper here. All right, so here is our piece of lightweight cardstock. Once again, those measurements are 8 by 7 3/4. On the 8-inch side, I am going to put my paper into my trimmer, and I am going to score it at 3/4 of an inch from this end, and then I will turn it and score it at 3/4 of an inch from the other end. Then I'm going to turn it this way, and we will move it to 6 inches here and give it a score. And then I'm going to move it down to 2.5 inches and score it right there. All right, so now we have 4 score lines, 2 coming in from each side. Put this away and show you where to trim that. Okay, let me find my scissors here. There they are. They ended up underneath my card. All right, here we go. So I'm going to come in with my bone folder, and oops, look, I got a little glitter on that. Oh my goodness. All right, well, that's going to be, I'll put that part on the inside, not to be one to waste. And start here. This is going to be covered up and on the inside of the card anyway. And of course, you know, I put that down on top of my card, but we're still in good shape over here. So, didn't wreck anything. All right, here we go. Now we're going to cut off these 4 the corners. So we want to trim those right away. I like to cut on the inside of the line so that I have a nice clean edge in my finished project. Come here and here. Just cut those pieces away. Oops. On this side. I think I could have did that a little bit neater. Let me fix that. This is what happens when you're trying to keep your head out of the camera. All right, now that I have these 2, whoops, we missed this part. Let's go ahead and cut that away here. And right there we go. All right, I do have this little scrap kind of hanging off the edge, so I'm going to just trim that up a bit. But I like to give it a nice finished look by coming in and cutting out a little notch right here on each of those edges. So I've got that there, and we'll do it again on the other side. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to take my paper rounder and I'm going to round the edges. Now I like to use mine upside down so that I can see that that's in there perfectly. See that little edge sticking out? And then I can have better control over what I'm doing. There we go. This one. And I'm going to just trim up this edge just a little bit more. That ended up a little crooked. All right, I'm trimming that little corner right there. I have a nice rounded corner piece. We could leave this just like it is, but I think I really like how it looks when it's rounded and finished. So let's go ahead and just do those other 2 sides. All right, now the shorter side of this envelope is going to be the top, so we're going to add some score tape here and here on the inside. So let me go ahead and grab my score tape. And I'm going to recommend doing it here because part of this flap will be showing in the finished piece. You could put it here, but since it doesn't go all the way up, I'm not going to recommend it with this project. How many of you like creating your own envelopes when you are making a card that's a little bit of a different size, or you don't have envelopes? Sometimes I run out and I create my own. I'm able to do that with all different sizes, and I just find that part of paper crafting to be really enjoyable. Okay, so I'm just gonna, oops, sorry about that. All right, I'm gonna pull those little pieces off. Fold this up. And there we go, our card is almost finished, but wait, there's more. We have our Echo Park designed paper, and this again is 6 inches by 4 1/4, and I have scored it already at 2.5 inches, so that's pre-scored. And I'm going to go ahead and round the corners just to give it a nice finished look, and that is at the smaller end of that cardstock. So we'll get those 2 corners done. There we go. And now I can slide this in and center it inside the envelope, and we have a nice opening to our envelope when our project is complete. And instead of the score tape, I think I'm going to use my glue today. That really got stuck in there. Without using the tips because I'm a little bit lazy and all about the speed. So we'll just add our glue to this little insert. We'll cover that back up. Hopefully it doesn't get stuck again. All right, and slide it right into our card. And just line up those score lines so it folds nicely once you get your card in. Oops. And just center it. There we go. Now we have a nice open flap opening to our envelope. And when you seal that up, you can either use more score tape or some glue. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a piece of score tape right here because my card is going into the mail very soon. All right. So let's check our card, and those dinkles seem to have had enough time to dry, so I think it's fine to go ahead and check the crease on our card base. And we could add the front. But you know, before I do that, I think I'm actually going to give it a greeting. And I did go ahead before I started today, and I lined up an Easter greeting. And so I like to line up my greetings on my card, and I showed this in a previous video that I use a grid and a piece of paper that goes straight across just to make sure that my sentiment is straight, and then I'm able to line up the top edge of my block to my card, and I find that way I get a pretty straight sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and just ink up my Happy Easter greeting. Bring back my stack of copy paper for just a little bit of padding and make sure we get a nice crisp image, and I stamp that down. All right, and remember that the VersaFine Clear is a very slow drying ink, so it's very easy to smudge, and I do want to make sure this comes out nice and straight, so excuse my head. And again, I'm just lining up my block with the corners and the edges, the top and the side edge of my card. And there we have it. That is a pretty straight sentiment. It came out pretty close to perfect. So here we go. I can just blot that off a little bit and make sure it doesn't smudge. And I'm going to use some more of the score tape just to adhere it to my card base. I do find that the release is easier on the double-sided tape if you use your bone folder and just burnish it down. Make sure it's stuck on there really well, and it just makes it a little bit easier to pull up that release paper. All right. Just line that up. And there we go, an adorable, tiny Easter card ready to mail. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for stamping with me today. See you soon.